So again, for anybody, if this is your first time joining us, my name's Adam. I'm the owner of Firehouse Training. We have Tom Hockett here. He's the president of the Fire Mitigation Alliance. Justin Brunner, again, another executive member. He is with a company called Desisol. Pete Sells and Mr. Dave Hindman here from Fire Rain. So many different group members here as part of the Fire Mitigation Alliance, which has been designed over the last 4 to 6 months to help provide services to the industry in both products that can help enhance firefighting capacities and emergency management capacities, as well as different training services that we can offer. We have seen big gaps over the last few years when it comes to emergency management, fire suppression, and other issues, not only with wildland, but other aspects of dealing with large municipal events and, of course, rural events. And that's how this cooperative came to be. So again, super excited for anybody that's able to come here tonight to participate. Again, for anybody that's joining us, I just let a few more in the chat just to give you a heads up, Justin. First and last name, please, if you can, on your profile. We are going to provide certificates of attendance for tonight. Again, really excited to provide some of the free training content over the next 45 minutes to an hour. What we're going to cover here tonight is mitigating the risk of industrial hazardous materials during wildfire emergencies. So it doesn't matter if you're in Midwestern Ontario, Northern Ontario, Western or Eastern Canada. We definitely see a prevalence of wildland issues that have affected communities. And we're here tonight to just talk about different ways that we can not only enhance our ability to deal with these events, but discuss different tactics and strategies. Right now, we know that with the prevalence of these emergencies, we need different tools, we need different tactics, we need techniques, we need technology and other things that will help aid in our advancement of these emergencies. Again, thanks everybody for putting your name in the chat. That's great. So far, 21 people in the group. So 21 people in the group so far. I'm just going to share my screen. Justin, just let me know if you can see the full screen there, if you can.
Yep, we're good there.
Good. So you can't see anything else. You just see my main screen?
Yes.
Appreciate it. Good stuff. So again, like I said, my name's Adam. I'm the only owner of Firehouse Training. We're basically out of Toronto, Ontario. We provide various training and everything from hazardous materials, incident command, and lithium-ion battery event training. Again, seeing these gaps in the industry that our local fire marshals' offices aren't providing, we're able to provide specialty training and topics and tactics that may not be available through your standardized firefighter training. Justin, tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to be on the committee. Oh, you're on mute there.
There we go. Now unmute myself, it'll help. My name's Justin Brunner, CEO and founder of Desisol. We've created a platform to help emergency services sector with scenario-based training. A lot of the research that we've done over time, and I'm a seasoned instructor, post-secondary of over 16 years now. And a lot of the training that I've done over time, I've realized quickly that, in order to get things to stick, and Adam, you can follow up on this as well, as, doing your day-to-day muscle memory stuff is great, but that knowledge that you need to then apply that in the real world under stressful situations, right? We need to create muscle memory for that. And that's where our system at Desisol called Assist comes into play with that, in creating those real world scenarios that TOs, so training officers, chief training officers, can use with their departments and use with their members to train them. So it's not just about doing those skills, those JPRs and things like that, but it's actually applying that in the real world and applying that to scenarios to, reinforce that and create those firefighters, police officers, paramedics, give them those experiences to know what that's like as real as possible and kind of experience that before they get to that situation.
So our part of Justin's training, for those of you that don't know, our NFPA 1001 refresher classes we do for various volunteer departments across Canada. Justin will create scenarios that can be used for things like diking and damming a spill, how to raise a ladder, rolling fire hose, how to set up an emergency decon area. So creating those school scenarios to enhance our learning experience. Super excited to have Justin on board. Mr. Peter Sells, tell us a bit about Fire Rain and what you're doing for our community. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Pete.
Yeah, no problem. Just had to unmute there. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Sells. I'm Chief Fire Training Officer of Fire Rain Inc. We're an Ontario-based company that produces a certified 100% bio-based fire protection gel. And we are excited to be part of this alliance, looking at, sometimes non-traditional ways, ways of getting new technologies into place, and really looking at the current problems and emerging problems that we face in the fire service.
Amazing, my friend. Glad you can make it out. And again, Pete's been out to some of our firehouse training courses, and with his product able to be utilized for wildlands, structure fires, and of course even lithium-ion batteries and electric vehicles. So super excited to have Pete out. Tom, tell us a bit about yourself before we get started.
Yeah, thanks. Great to see so many people out. I come from this not as a practitioner / firefighter. I come from the world of technology, bringing a technology to this network, and which is wildfire early detection. And in fact, I just met we had dinner with Fire Rain guys in Toronto last night with the climate impact conference that they spoke at this morning. So we're getting some good PR with our network of players here. I'm also acting as sort of the director of business development, president of this alliance, the Fire Mitigation Alliance. Set it up, done the website. I'm a biz dev guy, so I want to help grow this whole network to be something really significant across Canada and also North America, really, to be able to solve lots of problems for lots of firefighters and communities and businesses. In the case of this case, tonight we're talking about how to protect industrial facilities. By extension, by doing that, you're protecting the communities around it as well. So there's a lot of benefits to all these things we're doing. Last webinar we did was wildfire mitigation at a high level. Now we're diving a little bit deeper into businesses that are in forested areas, and that could be near a city, or it could be way out in the middle of nowhere, sort of thing. So that's where we're coming from.
I love it. Well, listen, everyone, I'm excited to get started here tonight. The amount of professionals we have in this chat tonight, again, Firehouse has been around for many years. I'm looking at the names in here, and we have some definite players. We have individuals that work for CN Rail. We have emergency managers for major municipalities. We have firefighters from as far as Pakistan. We have multiple emergency managers and fire chiefs in this chat tonight. I am actually blown away by the amount and extent of the experience. So I'm looking forward to jumping into this. This is an open concept roundtable training session, which means for individuals like Jacqueline Martins, Kayleen, Eric, and others that are in emergency management, please jump in and let us know your experiences dealing with these calls, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of content to discuss here tonight. So we know when it comes to dealing with wildland, that's one particular capacity that Ontario and of course Canada has to deal with when it comes to large scale events. When we're talking about those wildland events or wildfires impinging on military bases, industrial facilities, and communities, that's a whole other ballgame. I had the chance when I traveled up to Yellowknife a couple of years ago to provide some high-rise firefighting training, seeing firsthand the capacity and the work that was required to protect that community, and to hear the stories from those local firefighters was wild. What I mean by that is firefighters setting up trailers in the fire station parking lot for weeks on end while their families evacuated the community just to protect the fire station and to protect the downtown core of Yellowknife. Setting up fire breaks and other things that they would be able to do with the heavy equipment when it comes to dealing with the vegetation and other risks that were happening within those communities, again, absolutely blew me away. So when it comes to dealing with practical strategies, risk mitigation, and emergency response, We need to think about what we're going to do to prevent, mitigate, and respond to these emergencies. Whether you're a structural firefighter, whether you're an industrial firefighter, whether you're municipal, you're responding to help out for these large-scale events. Look what happened many years ago in Fort McMurray. There was city firefighters now responding on the front lines to deal with the wildland incidents that took place, that were going through copious amounts of air bottles, copious amounts of equipment, because they weren't used to dealing with fires of that magnitude that were much different than that of an industrial or a structural fire. When it comes to the wildfire risk factors, think about what we're dealing with. Wildfire-prone zone areas, flammable vegetation and weather conditions, lack of fire breaks and defensible space. And then you have fires that are impinging on a large oil and gas plant. What do you think could be some of the issues that we would deal with there? Jacqueline, if you don't mind, I might put you on the spot. I'm not sure if you can hear us or not. I see you on the chat. Are you able to talk about some of the emergency procedures that you saw when you were in Western Canada in your health and safety experience? I'm not sure if you're there, Jacqueline, if you can hear us. She's probably mad at me for putting her on the spot from before. Things that you need to keep in mind when dealing with these large-scale events. You need to ask yourself, what are we going to do to manage the hazardous materials inside that local facility, as well as the fire itself? Do you have enough defensible space? Do you have fire breaks and fuel areas that could be covered? What is your water supply like? What's the fire resistance of your building materials? And do you even have an on-site fire brigade to deal with it? See, it's one thing for on-site fire brigades in these facilities to deal with industrial fires. Now, what do you do when they're impinging on your particular areas? Does anybody here have any experience in working in some of those industrial facilities, or maybe in rural Western Canada, where we have seen the storage tanks, the possibility for chemical releases and other facilities that would be prone to wildfires impinging on those areas? What do you think? Have you guys had any experience dealing with some of those at your large facilities in rural Canada? Just going to look at the chat here. Pete Sells, I might put you on the spot. When it comes to dealing with events like this and looking at creating defensible space, looking at different products out there, can you talk a bit about what Fire Rain would be able to do to help protect some of those facilities, whether it's a military bases, farmers' fields, forests, things like that, where you think you could be of a benefit with your particular product? Again, many of the students here tonight aren't familiar with the Fire Rain EcoGel.
Sure, and thanks for this. One of the prime features of our EcoGel is that essentially it creates a hydrogel. You can think of it as just like a sticky goo. The consistency can be anywhere from like a maple syrup kind of a consistency all the way up to a clam chowder kind of a consistency, and anywhere in between there, depending on how you proportion it. And it will stick and stay in place on building structures, infrastructure, trees, bush, whatever. So it creates a layer of gel that is over 90% water, 95% water or more, that will stick and stay in place for a period of time that will allow it to protect from the flames that'll be impinging. And because it's certified 100% bio-based, it's all natural ingredients that go into it. It's not adding any issues. It's not adding any toxicity or environmental issues into the mix.
The one thing I noticed, Pete, when you did a presentation for us at Novellis in Kingston, tell everybody how you can apply this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did I see you applying this from the back of a rail car in some areas to help promote or protect railways as well? Is that what I saw in that one video?
Yes, we've been working with CN Rail and contractors to CN Rail in BC over the last wildfire season to protect railway infrastructure, primarily the track infrastructure and the wooden bridges. And there are hundreds and hundreds of bridges in British Columbia alone. You can imagine all the rail going over rivers and creeks and whatever. So working with them, we've created with our equipment partner spraying equipment that can move down the rail and apply a layer of eco-gel as it goes. Same concept could be used in an industrial facility to coat the roofs and exterior walls and exterior infrastructure of facilities that are threatened by wildfire, as well as the vegetation and a border around it.
The nice thing I like about Pete's product is that diversity. Again, Pete's come in and spoken with some of our industrial clients. You look at rail clients, you look at other wildland, where you have the ability to use that product pretty much universally. Pete, just a heads up, my friend Eric Lucko might reach out to you after. He's down in the Tri-Cities, Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo. He's an emergency manager. He's asking for some information on your product, so we can look to hook that up after. Okay?
No way.
Yep. Alberta firefighter Sven, tell us a bit about some of your experience out in Alberta, if you can hear us, when it comes to just dealing with some of these wildfires. But again, when they're impinging on communities, factories, manufacturing facilities, oil and gas. Do you have any experience there, Sven Hebard, when it comes to dealing with some of these from a wildland perspective? Not sure if Sven can hear us. He just put his name in the chat there. Oh, he's putting his mic on. All good.
There you go. Hey, Peter, a question about the applicability for your product in a industrial environment, like within the plant sort of thing. You guys have any use cases where it's putting out fires within the plant?
Short answer, yes. Our main thrust in that environment is actually more of a prevention than suppression.
Okay.
Although suppression certainly, but if you're doing hot work, which of course you are, in that plant somewhere, somebody's cutting, grinding, welding, soldering something, and you want to protect the area from sparks, embers. You can apply the eco-gel around the area, and it will protect the area where the hot work's being done. And then when you're done, you either rinse it away or wipe it away, and it's essentially food waste at that point. It's not a hazardous waste.
Cool.
And to add, this is David Hyman here. To add to that, we do sell portable cans of our eco-gel, which is more or less what Peter was referring to, called Hotworks. So that's a commercial product that we sell into Goodyear and other large industrial settings for just what Peter talked about.
Right. Yeah, good. That's on your website. You can see that stuff, so that's cool.
Sven, are you back there, pal?
Yeah, I got it working. Do you hear me?
Yeah, welcome, my friend. Welcome, my friend from Alberta. Do you have any experience in dealing with some of the emergency management side of wildfires when they're impinging on some of these, not just residential communities, but tell us about some of the impact for manufacturing, production, and even oil and gas facilities. Have you had much experience with that?
So last year I was with Minburn. I was on a fire department, Minburn County, and we were one of the heaviest deployed departments in Alberta to the wildfires in 2023.
Wow.
We there's one of 5 tactical tenders of that department, so we were deployed quite a bit. We were deployed to Rainbow Lake, which is basically a small town built there for the oil fields. So we did a lot of oil field work with them up there.
Whereabouts is that compared to Fort McMurray, Edmonton? Whereabouts would you be? I'm just curious.
Well, Rainbow Lake is far northwest. We chased that fire out into BC, northern BC.
Holy jeez.
So I think that one was in the millions of hectares. It was one of the largest ones in Alberta. Basically, once it impinged onto oil storage tanks or into the processing lines or the large plant, we had to actually protect a very large plant that was a very, very large processing plant for Cenovus. But once it got onto the oil leases, there was no stopping those tanks were beveling, and those fires got so hot they're melting tank lids before we could do anything. So a lot of that was fire guard breaks with dozers, and you're talking. I think the one dozer guard break was a 1/4 mile wide.
Unbelievable.
So that's what we used.
See, it's funny you mention that. So
those-
based on what Sven is saying there, the big thing when it comes to dealing with these fires and the larger facilities is the vegetation management, doing the control burns, obviously dealing with the different monitoring and surveillance, shutdowns for any of your utilities, including, gas or other processes that might be in those facilities. There's just so many considerations when it gets to a facility like that. So you're telling me that fire moved so fast, there was very little that some of these locations could do just because the impingement happened so quickly?
The one fire blew up on us one day. It was, I want to say it was around 3,000 hectares. And within a matter of 6 hours, it blew up to over 30,000.
Jesus.
So we weren't able, with Type 6 bush trucks, we weren't able to outdrive the fire. Basically, we were trying to get ahead of it, and we couldn't drive fast enough down the highway to get in front of this thing to try and make a wet line, a guard line. So you just had to let it roll over and basically go establish some sprinkler systems or whatever you needed at certain areas. And then we would actually go back burn. So what we do is you walk in the bush, you light a fire, and then you light a perimeter bush, and it'll actually suck itself in. It'll suck the outer ring in on itself.
Unbelievable. No, again, there's some serious risks there. Kayleen and Eric, I know you two worked together in the past. If you're there on the video, are you able to talk a bit about how we do some of the hazard identification or risk management for communities? Like what kind of things would be done ahead of time for wildfires, natural disasters like tornadoes, things like that? Is there much going on from an emergency management standpoint to document and be accountable for some of these facilities? Not sure if Eric can hear us or Kayleen.
I can hear you. I'll leave it to Kayleen there because we're a more urban center. Like the wildfire component is not huge on our radar.
Or from just a hazard assessment perspective, just give us a general hazard assessment for a community, wildfire aside. Tell me about some of the hazard and risk assessments.
So when you talk about industrial, industrial emergencies, let's call it that.
Yeah.
Like, we consider those. We deal we reach to our private partners. So we have companies like Linamar and Dow Corning and whatnot who have plans in place, and they're regulated, and they have to have, they're legislated to have a response plan in place, and then we work with them. So
okay.
And I mean, we'll work with them because our city, we have an evacuation plan, we have a communications, we have all these different plans, I'd like to say, in place. But also, I'll sit in meetings with fire prevention or with the fire chief to meet with these people and say, okay, what are you going to do? What is your role? And then we complement them. So it's kind of a partnership. We reach out to each other and we work together to make sure that, if something, God forbid, ever does happen, we're not all looking at each other saying, well, what are we going to do? Right? There's already a framework.
No, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. Jacqueline Martins, I know you have some experience doing some risk assessments and management out in the in Western Canada. Can you talk a bit about your overall risk management? And I'm not sure how much have you done when it comes to dealing with wildfires or also other natural disasters that might occur at large facilities. Have you had much experience dealing with that from a health and safety perspective?
Yeah, I dealt with a lot of facilities, especially up in like remote Western Canada. We just touched base on some of the regulated emergency response plans that are required, specifically the ones that are really helpful for the facilities, especially up in those areas, are the E2 plans, the environmental emergency plans. Within those plans, there is a full risk assessment. So a lot of the industries or facilities that were up north, or especially companies that had sites across North America, we ended up setting up a software
Okay.
platform where we were able to map all of the environmental receptors, health receptors, all parts of like inlets, water bodies. And then from there, we started to map and track where all these companies kept and maintained all of their emergency response equipment. So from there, especially for rail, there's a lot of mutual aid agreements amongst them and their customers. If they're not already signed on through like a federated co-op or something like that, this was really helpful to be able to understand more about what resources were in the area depending. So with E2 plans, basically under Environment Canada, for these facilities that contain certain chemicals above specific thresholds, they require an E2 plan. Within that E2 plan, we have to do a hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment where we do all those maps. And then from there, based on whatever chemicals and at which quantities they're held at those facilities, we make sure that everything's in place from there. So practicing with local fire responders, these E2 plans, it was, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago that the government came out full force with implementing E2 plans. And as we had more fire units come to facilities and actually see if the equipment was compatible, if they understood whether their radios, when they got to the site, if they had to switch radios to be able to communicate. There were so many little discrepancies that we were able to identify from there. Sounds like someone has something to build on that.
No, you're right. It's true, because right now with the E2 plans, for those that aren't familiar, especially as hazmat geeks within my department in Toronto, we try to use those as much as we can. But Jacqueline, correct me if I'm wrong, like, how are they enforced? Do you find that they were enforced as much now as they were then? Like, I just don't see us using those as often as we should. And I find, compared to our friends in the US, they call it a tier 2 plan, or a tier, they have a certain name for it. It's different there. It's very heavily policed, and the insurance are enforced, and the insurance companies will require that. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, and if Eric or Kayleen want to speak on this too, I don't think that's required in Ontario or Canada. Is it, from an insurance perspective?
I've encountered that from a business continuity perspective,
Right.
where an insurance company wanted to see proof of that.
Interesting.
From that side, not specifically from an emergency management side.
See, the reason I brought that up, everybody, is that when you go into industrial facilities, high rises, commercial properties, especially us here at Firehouse Training, we're doing more training on fire safety plans and an overview for that facility. And even if that facility, again, between you and me and everyone on this chat, we very rarely talk about the E2 plan. We talk more about the fire safety plan. And again, in my experience here in Ontario, I just don't see it as prevalently as my friends in the US that are all hazmat technicians, and they're dealing with them on every hazardous material event at a fixed facility. So that's why I asked.
I think there's a lot more information that's required, especially in the US under that. You want the information somewhere so you can check the box, but at the same time, you want the plan to be able to be a plan where people can flip to something and fully understand within a picture exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line. What I ended up doing is we ended up coming up with something called a one plan. Okay. So a lot of times these facilities are required. They might need a rail security plan if they bring in hazardous materials by rail, for example. They may also hold an ERAP. Then they'll need the E2 plan, their health and safety plan. And within that, there's a lot of redundant information. So one plan is where I consolidated everything from any place where they're regulated under the sun, and I turned it into a skinny document with
Makes sense.
all of the, not the junk, everything else in the appendices.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense. Kayleen, if you're on the chat here tonight, I know from an emergency management standpoint, you took a lot of calls for large scale events, especially in Northern Ontario. Kayleen, are you there to talk a bit about what some of the assistance you would provide from Emergency Management Ontario for these wildfire events? Would you be dealing with the MNR and other large scale firefighting capacities to help mitigate the fire? Or would it be more from just a contact and communication standpoint? I'm not sure if Kayleen can hear us there.
Yeah, Adam, sorry, I think Kay just had to step away for a second. She's but if you want, I worked with her as a duty officer with EMO, but I would say 80 to 90% of their response, at least when we were there, anecdotally, was to those northern communities, specifically those First Nation communities. And in fact, that's probably why I'm on this call right now, is because there's a little bit of a soft spot for that component here. So, yeah, I mean, if you want a provincial level, that's high on their list. The federal government contracts that out to Emergency Management Ontario. It's significantly. They spend a lot of time not only rehearsing that, but a lot of time working with Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Oh, sorry, I just muted you there, Eric. My bad.
And I can take a hint if you need me to keep on.
Sorry, I thought that was Kayleen. I was going to mute her. My bad. Okay, no, that makes sense. That's you. So, can you tell a bit about like what resources would you possibly tone out or call out? Again, don't just think of it from a firefighting perspective, but even the business continuity. Is there certain resources that you know for a wildland event you would tone out or call out for assistance?
The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry itself has a significant, like frontline, like not only from firefighters on the ground, they have those air assets. They have those agreements through something we call GEMS, the Joint Emergency Management System, where they actually have costs in place, so they know what it's going to cost if they got to call in a private airline to evacuate people. You know, and they also have those frontline firefighters and, you know, air bombers, helicopters, everything else, assets that go far beyond my expertise. So there's that component. There's the private sector component where they can fly an airplane. And then there's also the outreach, which happens, you know, probably a little too often for my comfort. When it happens, it's really bad. But they reach out to those federal assets who go through Public Safety Canada or the Department of National Defense and request those big Hercs and those big planes and whatnot. If you look, if you're sitting in a First Nation community and you've got 400 people sitting there and you can see the flames on the horizon, there's no time to say, okay, well, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's get a plane in there, get them on, and get them the hell out of there, right?
It's funny you mentioned that. At Firehouse Training, we've been getting a lot of calls lately from First Nations communities since we've been providing them a lot of the, you know, your NFPA 1001, you know, basic firefighter skill set. And I'm telling you, the more I talk to these chiefs, Eric, it boggles my mind. These flying communities, the lack of resources, lack of budgets and equipment available for these communities to be self-sustainable is literally shocking. And it is comparable to third world countries. And we're only talking about communities, you know, 10 to 15 hours north of Toronto. I'll be driving up to Hearst next weekend. If anybody wants to join the drive, you're welcome to. It's going to be quite the hike, especially in the snow. Tough to find any takers these days to come help me at Firehouse for those drives, but that's another story. Anyway, going to be a good weekend because we're going to go up there and do some incident command and electric vehicle training. But when we're talking to some of the Indigenous communities up there, they are just welcome to any resources, equipment, training, and anything that's available to them. Again, Tom, I'm going to bring you into this if I can, please. Tom works with a product called Amplicam, which is an AI sensor technology. Tom, if you want to talk a bit about what that product does and why these Indigenous communities and with those needs have been reaching out to you lately as well.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, I think there's just so many different issues here that are all sort of the timing is good. We're having these conversations. You know, we had a horrific fire season, not last year, but this year. But the last year, it was still bad this year. But there's risk, and there's that needs to get mitigated. There's these communities, indigenous communities in the north. There's a lot of businesses that are in forested areas that are either mines or forestry companies or gas companies, whatever. And all these companies, all these groups need to be able to respond more effectively and quicker so that they don't get into these, they call it catastrophic issues and huge fire things. So this is where Amplicam, the group that I'm affiliated with, we've basically got a technology that detects wildfire from above the tree line, you know, in a tower or above on the top of a building that looks around. It'll pick up smoke that is early stages of a fire from about 20 to 30 kilometers away. And it rotates from the top of the, you see the picture there of a camera that's rotating, and it will differentiate a chimney fire from a wildfire and pick it up in the first couple of minutes that it's things. So it can be somebody can go out and attack it, you know, within an hour or two and put it out. And we've got a track record for doing this because we can literally determine within 100 meters where that is within that 20, 30 kilometer range for somebody to go out and attack it so that it doesn't come to your facility, doesn't come to your community. And it can be attacked before it gets bigger than half a hockey rink. Now, if I was doing this in the States, I'd say it's the size of a baseball diamond. But anyways, the idea is that the sooner you attack these things, the sooner you can put it out better. Once it rages out of control, it's been running for a couple of hours. Now you're at the moment of where you're just trying to keep it controlled and going in the right directions. But this really has the ability for a game changer for a community. Jasper did not need to happen as an example. That was within 20 kilometers of downtown Jasper. We would have picked up that smoke within 20 minutes of it starting, and that wouldn't have been $880 million insurance claim on that. So think about that when you've got your industrial operation in near a forested area. You can detect it early on and make sure you go and you communicate with somebody to go out and make sure it gets attacked. And that's where you work with your local fire group. That communication piece, I think, is so key. But I know we're in Petawawa, Ontario. We've had the system installed now for 2 years. The military forest group that runs that camera has let the civil fire department in Petawawa know about some fires to go out and put out, and they're very thankful for it. Same thing can happen anywhere in North America, and to do that. But anyways, I love to chat with anybody that wants to protect their operation and by extension, really the local community nearby.
No, and that's great, Tom. At the end of the day, the one thing you want to consider with Tom's product is this isn't just about Northern Ontario. This isn't about just Western Canada. Aaron Rand, if I can put you on the spot, Aaron works for us here at Firehouse Training. You're only in Huntsville, but correct me if I'm wrong, in that area, your Huntsville, Muskoka Lakes, that area, are you still dealing with wildfires to a certain extent that have crept in on some of those communities, even within an hour radius of yourself?
Oh, for sure. This year we actually got really lucky and we didn't have a whole lot. Last year we had a couple of good ones that were a few acres, nothing, we don't get anything too massive. But we're just lucky. We are heavily dense forest and very spread out. And if we got a real dry season, it would not take long to have a crazy fire.
These products, right? We keep thinking the term wildfire. We keep thinking Northern Ontario, Western Canada. We have seen this, an hour and a half north of the GTA. Tom, what about the meeting you and I had when we were with OMRA at our Fast Act Decon event a few weeks ago? you said you knew some people in the north, not north, but the New York State area, that they were currently dealing with wildfires in the last 3 to 4 weeks. Can you tell everybody about what we saw there?
Yeah, and that came up in that the climate impact conference, where there was about 3 sessions this morning about wildfire and the problem of wildfire in the world, and it's no longer a totally rural scenario. New Jersey and New York City were at risk in the last month or so. There are lots of businesses and industrial operations that are potentially at risk that aren't just way up in the northern by the Arctic Circle. This is not just that. Now, certainly that is a big deal because they're a long way from resources to be able to help quickly and fast. But at the same time, this whole industrial risk factor is high. I think almost anywhere there's treed and dried potential drought environments that are going to happen more and more often.
Geez, Tom, for a minute there, I thought you were going to talk about climate change and get into politics of this, but I'm kidding. I'm just joking.
I mean, things are drying out, and you've never seen wildfires near New York City.
I agree.
And now we are. So it's bizarre.
Well, all joking aside, politics aside, we have never seen the devastation that we have in recent years with wildfires. So whether it's climate change or other issues that are causing these events, we've never seen them near such highly populated and urban areas. And that's what leads us to the next slide here, the emergency planning side of things. What kind of wildfire response plans do we have? The regular fire drills, you're providing staff with hazardous materials training to know about those shutdowns and shutoffs within the facilities if these areas are if the incremental fires get close to these large scale facilities. You think of Synovus, you think of Esso, you think of Nova Chemical, all these large facilities that if they shut down, definitely affects our economy. Aaron, even though you're in a highly populated area not far from the GTA, have you had some discussion even in your volunteer training nights about different ways to handle wildfire or even grass fire events?
Yeah, we train on it once a year. Even our new recruit classes, they get put through a wildfire training.
Really? Okay.
Right off the bat. The way we do our recruit training is they start out with wildland and first aid at the beginning, and then near the end of the year they run their basic firefighter 1 and 2.
That's huge. Peter and David, if I can ask you gentlemen, when it comes to dealing with the local authorities and the stakeholders, you know as well as anybody, when it comes to not just promoting your amazing product, but dealing with the stakeholders to make change. What has that experience been like? Both the pros and cons of getting to the politicians and others when it comes to understanding the risk factors that are involved. I see this already with lithium-ion batteries and electric vehicles. I had 2 back-to-back meetings today in Mississauga and Toronto with high-rise buildings. And when I'm talking to property managers, with all due respect to them, it seems like they're a little bit out to lunch when it comes to not just the hazard, but any ideas on how to mitigate it, because nothing has been put forth by our stakeholders, by our government officials. What's that been like for yourself, and not just addressing the risk, but also trying to promote your product to make things safer?
Well, I think you can relate to this. When you're dealing with, first of all, I'll talk about the firefighters, then I'll talk about the city administration. When you're dealing with firefighters, there's 2 things that firefighters don't like: change,
and the way things were,
and the way things are right now. Yeah, exactly. So we have to. We have to work within the culture. Joking aside, it's a very traditional industry, and it's the reason it's a very traditional industry is because the risks are so high. Yeah. So that you want something that is tried and tested and true. So when you've got an idea or a concept that is contrary what's been going on before. Whether we're trying to have Class A fires fought with gel instead of water, or we're trying to have Class B fires fought with gel instead of foam. There's a lot of education process that needs to go on.
You're right.
It's actually easier to make the case to city managers, mayors, councilors, and then upper tier government officials. And I'll let Dave reflect on the military aspect of that, because in their case we're talking about cost, we're talking about risk, we're talking about life cycle cost, cleanup, soil remediation, and all the other issues around the different agents with different toxins in them that we've been using for the last 60 years. So I'm just going to ask Dr. Heineman, David, to reflect on how that's worked with our relationship with the Canadian military.
So I'm gonna step back for a sec and talk about some of our industrial clients. There was talk about Petawawa. We're working with Canadian nuclear labs, which everybody realizes have reactors on nuclear reactors on site and do all sorts of high risks experimentation. So they've come to us with to use our product as a barrier protector because they're the Deep River facility is surrounded by forest, so they're a microcosm of everything we've talked about so far tonight. And just as an example of where companies and larger organizations see a product like ours being able to play. And over to the military side, we've actually just finished up a year-long study with the Canadian Navy looking at barrier protection with our product on board ship. And also, this is not specifically Navy, but the tests we did at CFP Borden last summer, the use of our product to pre-coat. So, that controlled burn aspect, but to pre-coat the firing ranges so that you're not constantly setting the bush on fire and having to A, shut down the training, and B, call in and potentially have a brush fire that gets out of hand. So again, there's sort of another example, that one specifically of the sort of urban, rural, urban wildland interface that the Canadian military has all around the world, and the military in general, because they constantly do live fire exercises.
It's huge. And again, there's so many levels to that. I know we have Mr. Haringa on here from the railroad. Mike, are you there tonight, my friend? Are you able to talk about just some of the challenges from an organization your size, dealing with the different municipalities, the volunteer fighters, the stakeholders, when it comes to training, or just from managing emergencies from the railroad perspective? Not sure if Michael can hear us there. Hey, Michael.
I can hear you.
What are some of your thoughts on that, dealing with the stakeholders when it comes to your training that you have with your rail company, your ability to respond to emergencies, and some of those gaps in the communities?
Some of the biggest thing, and we go out as the railway, we go out and train transcare events to all the fire departments on our network. So either large communities, large cities, or small communities, First Nations, we go out and train them in different aspects of the response to wildland fires, as well to train derailment causing a leak or incident in a community. So we do a lot of that training. The biggest things that we are facing some of these events is confidence, and having that confidence with the communities.
Yeah.
That we know we're bringing the right skills, personnel to the scene. the issues that we've had is that who's this guy, and then who's he going to tell me how to do my job?
It's true.
And that's with some chiefs and fire chiefs in the industry. That's what we've been seeing is those type of things. Is that if you don't go in there with confidence and telling them or explaining to them what needs to happen and have that training done beforehand, an event happens, we always have issues. So, and that's why we go out and do 5,000, 6,000 training events or training personnel a year through our network to make sure that they do know how to respond to our events and have the confidence that the railway is bringing the right resources. And with wildland fire, I don't know if you have all know this yet, but we do have fire trains out west that we're building and we have developed to provide fire or water supply and fire protection along our system in our in rail systems and bridges and things that we have rail cars for water, and we have modern nozzles on top of a box car and pumps, fire pumps, where we can protect the infrastructure and wet down the vegetation in certain areas that we need to do protect our bridges and stuff. So huge. We do have those. We have three training right now out west, and I think we're building 3 more this year. So we're going to have a whole fleet of these trains to help protect the infrastructure and communities too. We were stationed at Jasper for a while last year and had them just on standby to that system there. So.
No, that's huge, Michael. Again, I appreciate that. Michael, if you get a chance too, can you please put your name and contact info just in the chat? Michael works for one of the local railroads here. So again, if anyone's looking for additional training or information, we want to use the Alliance here as a good way to network. The one thing that many of us here in the chat are involved in is we're part of the Ontario Hazmat Responders Association. And what that is a not-for-profit hazmat group here in Ontario. We're running a conference next April. If anybody's interested in participating and learning more about hazardous materials, seeing the gentleman at Fire Rain, seeing Michael Harenga from the railroad, and many of us here that participate in those events to learn more. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg here tonight that we are covering, right? So at the end of the day, we need to do what we can to try to discuss how we're going to minimize these risks. That's obviously going to be through safety training, through planning and others. There's only so much you can do when it comes to emergency shutoff systems, backup power supplies, emergency response teams, spill containment, storage containment of these hazardous materials if a wildfire is impinging on your facility. So we really need to understand that, we can have every system in place, but there needs to be training. Anything you want to add, Justin, as we kind of finish up on some of the group chats tonight?
Yeah, just going along with training too. One thing that we got to remember is, and we've all experienced this, whether we're doing WMIS training or any of that base training stuff, right after a couple of years of doing it, you become kind of complacent to that, and the answers, right? It just becomes that muscle memory. And as trainers and leaders out there, we have to start thinking of our training as something that not only challenges the people that we train, but challenges us as leaders. Are we having people asking us questions where we have to sit back and think about it, or say, what, listen, let me get back to you? That's where we need to be. We really need to expand on our training, right? Get outside of our own comfort zones and really challenge everybody. And that's where we see a lot of these systems coming into play with new technologies out there. Stuff that Tom was talking about, right? How can we integrate stuff like that into training? How can we integrate stuff from Fire Rain, right? Any of these companies. So when you look at solutions for training, really think about how you can challenge yourself. And at DESISolve, we really pride ourselves in doing just that, right? We can give scenarios and create scenarios that, you haven't experienced yourself, right? So now you're thinking of how you would actually solve this problem. So as leaders, we really need to think about this when we do our training. Thanks, Adam.
No, I appreciate that. And again, everybody, like I said, part of these sessions that we're going to do quarterly, every 2 or 3 months, we're going to put together a training session, obviously within the scope of wildfire. But there's so many different challenges that we're encountering, from the industrial facilities to the wildland urban interface, incident command structures, emergency management, resource management, business continuity. Like there's so many avenues that we can go down with these topics that we're looking forward to doing in 2025. So again, for those that are interested in further information on anything we talked about tonight, from the railroad to our Ontario Hazardous Responders Association to any of the products that you saw, do snap a quick pic with your cell phone. On the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see all of our contact info. Again, you know, the way that we're going to move forward to combat a lot of these issues, mitigate these situations through tactics and strategies for different firefighting aspects is through networking, right? And that's a part of the reason why we came together with this alliance. Again, Brent Sterling couldn't be here tonight with Wasanaway Consulting. Again, he sends his regards, but we have a lot of amazing executive members that are here to help support any questions that you have. So many events coming up. I know Eric Lucko put together an emergency management event coming up, I believe, next April or May. That's in Guelph. We have the Lambton College Fire Trade Show coming up in January. I'll be in Daytona Beach speaking at the Hazmat Trade Show. We're going to be in Boston, Massachusetts. I think a month after that, Oklahoma. So there's so many events where we can all get together and discuss not only the areas of firefighting, but hazmat, and then, of course, the wildland issues. Just looking down in the chat. Yep, go ahead.
And Adam, I just add to anybody that's on the call that has training or consulting expertise that they can bring to the Alliance, please reach out to me. If you have some products that can add to this, the Alliance, please also reach out to me. It's about building these relationships so that we can go forth as an organized group to solve problems.
You know what? I'm going to throw this out there, Tom. Don't be mad at me, but I mean, I think we only have 4 or 5 members on our Alliance WhatsApp chat. I think we should expand it. I think with the experience we have here in these chats, I've seen some very high-level professionals. I think we should grow that chat to have other individuals like Michael, Kayleen, Eric, and others, Jacqueline, and whatnot, as we grow this alliance where we can use it as a springboard to pass along different ideas and events that are coming up. Because there's so much coming up. I know Justin's reminding me of things on a daily basis. Tom's at an event this week that I didn't even know was happening. And it's literally 5 minutes from my house. So when these things happen in the community, you know, we need to be able to network. So again, let's all reach out. Exactly. We have many of your email addresses. If you're interested in joining the Alliance as part of our inner circle, our inner group, to kind of see some behind the scenes discussion and then plan future ideas for training events. Let's do it. I think we have some big opportunities here as this grows into 2025. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, David and Pete, Aaron, Jacqueline, Kayleen, Eric. I see Chip there. Eric. There's multiple Erics on the call. Harry. There's a whole bunch of great individuals here tonight. Let's all keep in touch. I'll do a mass PDF file for everybody that participated with your certificates of attendance. But again, reach out to us. Instagram, X, TikTok, you name it. There's lots of ways to reach out to anyone from the Alliance. LinkedIn, many of us here are on LinkedIn. And then we can just pass along some of this experience and knowledge and networking as we plan our next event a couple of months from now. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. Super appreciative. Keep safe, everybody, and stay out of the snow, okay?
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay safe. Bye-bye. Thanks again.
Good.
Awesome turnout tonight.